from Long Beach, California, this is GovLove, a podcast about local government brought to you by Engaging Local Government Leaders. I'm Meredith Reynolds, Deputy City Manager of Long Beach and GovLove co-host. We have a fun episode for you today. In honor of July, which is Parks Make Life Better Month, we are talking about all things parks and recreation with Lydie Gutfeld, the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services from the City of San Bernardino, California. But first, the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. ELGL is a nationwide professional association engaging the brightest minds in local government. Check us out and learn more about membership at elgl.org. Now let me introduce today's guest. Lydie Gutfeld serves as the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services for the City of San Bernardino and has extensive work experience in the multifaceted field of community services. Lydie previously worked 6 years in the city of Mission Viejo as a Community Services Manager, 13 years with the City of Irvine, as well as time with the City of Beverly Hills. Lydie holds a bachelor's degree in Child and Adolescent Development and a master's degree in Public Administration with a focus on human resources from Cal State Fullerton. She also served on the California Parks and Recreation Society State Board as their 2019-2020 president and was awarded the Helen Pontus National Award of Merit from the Women in Leisure Services in 2019. This is the highest recognition given by the Women in Leisure Services for her extensive efforts and service to women in the profession. I want to say welcome to Lydie. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I am very excited to hear all about Parks and Rec for our Parks and Rec Month episode, but let's start with a lightning round that helps our listeners get to know you better.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So what was the first music album that you ever bought?
Okay, so I had to really think about this because I think the year, if I'm not mistaken, was 1987. And so I was a dancer. And so my dance teacher was very eclectic in her music selection, and she would do these crazy warm-ups, and I was just absolutely enthralled by everything that she did and all the music that she introduced us to. So I would make my mom take me to the record shop on Sundays. And so I actually called my mom and said, like, what do you remember being like the first ones? So Michael Jackson Bad,
of course,
was a huge hit. Fleetwood Mac had a big album. Depeche Mode, Music for the Masses.
Oh yeah.
And Whitney Houston's Whitney album came out. But I think the one that I just recklessly fell in love with, and this is so funny thinking back, was LL Cool J. He had his Bigger and Duffer, and he had the I Need Love, and I was like, oh God, that's amazing. I remember just goo gagaing over it. So, but yeah, no, this brought back a lot of memories. But yeah. No, definitely I had quite a few albums, but I can't remember which one was first, but that was 1987 for me.
I love it. And then what about in your literary kit? What are you reading right now?
Okay, this is when I'm glad that there's no video to this because I will blush. I am currently reading The Crown of Midnight by Sarah Maas. I started the series. My daughter got me kind of hooked into it. And so I have just finished book 2. So that's Crown of Midnight. But I toggle. I try and have a balance with the books that I read. And I am going to just give the disclaimer. I don't necessarily have time to read. So I'm an Audible fan. That's how I manage my car rides and get my Zen on. So I try and come into work with Outlive is the book that I'm listening to right now. It's by Dr. Peter Attia. And he talks about the 4 terrible diseases that a lot of people are misinformed on, with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's. And so it's kind of a life longevity informational session that I get every morning. And I just try and kind of bring some of those concepts into kind of, if I'm feeling a certain way or if I'm doing something that's making me feel a certain way, is this affecting my longevity of life? And so I try and really be conscious of some of the decisions I make with my nutrition and just healthy lifestyles, because a job like mine is very time consuming. My life is based on time, and I don't necessarily have the time to go and work out and So I try and do the things the right way. So I'm trying to educate myself right now to make sure that I live longer than I think I can.
Yeah. Well, and also great things to bring into the space with all of the different folks that you serve, from, youth to our elders. So definitely a good read for that information.
Yeah.
And then what about, assuming that you have time to watch TV, what is the last movie or TV show that you watched?
Okay. So, I am a Netflix lover, but I have to watch it at certain times because my kids take my time at home. So my husband likes to call it my 6 a.m. movie watching because I just wake up with a natural alarm clock of 5:45 every day. And so, right now, I just finished the Bridgerton last 4 episodes, and I started the Your Honor with the guy from Breaking Bad. I'm horrible with names, so I'm totally diving into that one right now. That's my show. I don't even remember the last movie I watched.
Yeah, very popular ones at the moment. So you'll be in the know without the spoiler alerts, right?
Yes, I appreciate the Netflix algorithm. It keeps me going.
There you go. And then let's finish out our lightning round here with, what is one favorite park that inspires you?
I think, I go back and forth. I love Central Park in New York City. I think it's just one of the most unique spaces in a downtown space. And I try and gain the inspiration for what the city has done in that park, to do what I can bring here in the city of San Bernardino. And we have a beautiful 44-acre park right in the heart of downtown with a man-made lake in it. It's Second Lake Park. And I'm sure I'll talk about it later on, but it's one of our big ARPA projects. And so we're going to completely renovate it, but it's a park that used to have dead bodies in it, and so now it's time to revitalize and rejuvenate and get a community back to be in a downtown beautiful setting with a lake.
Yeah, well, Central Park is definitely a good inspiration for that, for all that New York has gone through over the years. So
yeah,
great. Well, let's talk a little bit about how you got to be here. You have had quite the journey. When did you first catch the Parks and Rec bug? What is your origin story in the Parks and Rec world, and how did some of those experiences lead you to work in Parks and Rec and local government?
yeah. I had some trouble as a teenager. I didn't make the best decisions, and so I got in a little bit of trouble, and so I had to serve some hours. And my mom worked in the movie industry. She did hair for the movie industry. And so she had a salon that she worked at in Beverly Hills. And disclaimer, we did not live in Beverly Hills. We lived up the hill and over on the other side. But she dropped me off and said, get your life together. So she dropped me off at the Roxbury Community Center, where I got to do some hours there. And, right place, right time. I think it was just one of those situations where I saw, I'd always grown up helping and volunteering. Helping people has always been a part of my DNA. But I just never realized that there was this whole thing called Parks and Recreation. I didn't realize that there was a community service aspect to it. So it was a blessing in disguise. And I ended up working for the city for 9.5 years. So it's like, I can't really, pinpoint when I got the rec bug. I think it was just kind of feeling at home. I felt very comfortable in helping people. And then it just turned into what my passions were. So I was a competitive swimmer. So I got into the pools, I got into lifeguarding, I became a pool manager, and then randomly became a park ranger in Beverly Hills. I was a park ranger at the Greystone Mansion, which is a haunted mansion, which filmed such a cool place. And, just I built my experiences of like leading people. And, I was in charge of getting location scouts to like understand the ins and outs and logistics of this massive, 400-acre land with like this 55-bedroom mansion, with, haunted, scary stories and voices you could hear. And so just, learning how to just like manage expectations really. And then, and then after Beverly Hills, after 9 years, I had gone back and forth with school, just didn't quite finish. Got married in the process, divorced in the process, and, just kind of had to make a complete shift. And I had an opportunity to, a friend of mine started a company called SWAT, Summer Winter Action Tours, and they did all the student travel stuff. So spring break and, grad trips. And so I pretty much lived in Mexico for 2 years and kind of got bored of that. And then I had moved to Orange County at that time with the company, and Irvine had a part-time facility leader position. And I was like, you know what? I'm done hurting my liver. I'm like, I need to be better and go back to what I loved. And I got the job, and I ended up doing almost 15 years, and it was wonderful, wonderful years in Irvine. And I learned so much about standards of excellence and mission statements and phenomenal programming, and just, the standards that parks should have. And, it was really an eye opener, because I think Irvine kind of shifted me from, dealing with people to dealing with places and programs. And that's really where my programming heart like exploded. And I was really fortunate. I had wonderful staff, wonderful leaders. And, I learned, I sponged it up. And so those almost 15 years there, finished my education. And then I was ready for that next step. And it kind of got hard in Irvine, because I knew I was ready, and I was starting to get a little bored, because I was just like, and it's, I think some of us who have worked for cities, you kind of get into that stuck of, there was so many of you that came in at the same time. You have the same education, you have the same years of service. And every time a full-time position promotion comes up, it's 20 of you that are battling for the same thing. And then this conflict and all the gross stuff that comes, that people don't really talk about all that much. But I just got over it. And I was like, you know what? I need to get out. I need to get out of Irvine and check it out. And when I made that decision, I was really fortunate that Mark Nix over in Mission Viejo had a manager spot open. And I remember I was 8 months pregnant. And I was so afraid of going into that interview. I remember telling my husband, I was like, where should I go shop to hide this 8-month belly that I got going in? And
yeah, that can be really nerve-wracking.
It was. And knowing that if I got the job, I'd be there for less than a month and then leaving for 12 weeks was really hard. It was something that you had to really commit to. And oh my gosh, that interview was in Marie Knight, Laura Detweiler, and Allison Giglio, like the 3 coolest chicks in the world, right? And my baby is just like, like just kicking. I like had to stand up in the interview. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I'm going to ruin myself. And I got the job, and 7 years, almost 7 years later, I had the opportunity to do so many cool things, and from special events to CIPs and everything else in between. Big shift. Irvine was a very much staff-led program city. Mission Viejo was contracts. And so I had to completely shift my my dynamics of everything, how I communicated, how I spent my time, what kind of trainings we did with staff. It was all very different because of the contract-based concept. But again, what a great learning opportunity. And I got to the point where I decided it was time to be a director, and I started looking around, went out for a couple interviews, knew right away that I was not the right fit in the first interview. I didn't even, if I got a second interview, I was like, it's not good for me. And then the opportunity came here in San Bernardino, and it was very organic. And so I've been here for 2.5 years, and, doing a lot of great stuff. But, it's 30 years later. It's crazy to say 30 years later, here I am. You would have asked me that when I was 16 years old. I was like, you were crazy. This is not a career.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in this space, you've worked across, youth and seniors, and then different programs from like aquatics to, after school and recreational programs. Are there any particular notable experiences that have led to some key learning moments for you?
Oh, for sure.
What comes to mind?
Gosh, my transition to senior services in Irvine. I had always worked with youth and families. I had never worked with the aging population. And I remember Darren Lowry walked me in, and told me that there was going to be like some budget cuts because University Park, where I was working, was going to get renovated. And so all the staff had to be moved. And the only place that they had for me was seniors. And I remember just crying and crying and saying, no, 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 I don't like old people. They don't have any energy. I'm not. And oh my God, like it just became the best 7 years of my life. I remember, and I tell this quite often when I'm speaking, I think I became like, what's it called? A sommelier. I invested in a lot of wine in those first 6 months. I was like, man, these people take up a lot of your time, and everybody knows the mayor. And I mean, they all write letters. And this is when I got introduced to what, the voting population is. This is when I got introduced to how politics plays a key role in what we do to accomplish impacting cities. But more importantly, I learned the true cycle of life and what it means when we say parks make life better. And it really became something that I became just almost obsessed with. I went to conference. I'll never forget this. I went to conference my very first year in working in seniors. And this is when Jane Addams was still in charge. And I was furious to open up the catalog and see there were only one session on seniors and aging. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how can this not be more important? This is the final. And it was funny because it was right around 2008 where the first baby boomer became a baby boomer. So the first, one to turn 65. And then there was this whole thing of like, for the next 19 years, 10,000 a day will turn 65. And what is your senior center doing? And I was like, let's get it. So I remember I'm like, I want a meeting with Jane Addams. And I did.
Good for you.
I cornered her at conference and I was like, hey, I want more senior programming. She said, well, then make it happen. And I was like, okay, I will. And so the next 2 years, I honed in on like baby boomer programming, taking the senior out of the center, everything that I could do to really kind of involve this whole new demographic of generational programming for senior centers. And it became like my life's legacy work in Irvine. And I was so excited about it because it helped us open up another senior center, which was a baby boomer center. It helped us really completely reconfigure the concept of senior programming. But more importantly, it taught me that we have this responsibility as professionals to go from, when we have them in our swim classes at 6 months and Mommy and Me, then they go into our preschool classes, then they go into our after school programs, then they go into our teen programs, then they're young adults taking contract classes. And then all of a sudden we just forget. Well, no, it's these young adults who have senior parents. And that's what I started to see at the senior centers. I had all these adults coming in that were like my age saying, dude, what do I do with my parent? And it was like, I've never thought about it. So then I'm calling my mom who's 65. I'm like, what do you like to do? Like, what's, And so then the cycle really kind of hit me because we never thought past adult programming. Senior programming really before 2008 was just kind of to the side, it's like, oh yeah, it's chair yoga, like that kind of stuff. Now, holy cow, you got seniors running marathons and doing stuff like jumping out of airplanes. I mean, senior excursions are wild. And, it made me realize too, that the older generations, before baby boomers, the ones that were in their 80s, 90s, and 100s, they were kind of lost in translation, right? Because it was this whole new programming. So you had to find that balance. And I think that kind of taught me to be really aware of how we master plan our sites and how we really are strategic in the way that our programming looks, and not being afraid of doing intergenerational programming and really looking at it from a completely different lens and a completely different perspective. And it's really helped me become, I think, a phenomenal programmer. And it's helped me be able to kind of teach that now as I'm, more seasoned in my profession.
Right. Well, and those spaces that and programs are there for connection and community. And that can be the case at any age, right?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was taking a drink.
You're fine.
No, I mean it's so true. I just said this the other day. A program is a program, and people are always going to be people. It's the impact that you make, right? And so don't underestimate how you can be changing someone's life, no matter what their age is. And I really think that that stands true in what we do.
Yeah. Well, and in some of those spaces, are when you're thinking about what kind of impact that they have on someone's life, you may never know, you may never see it, but if you can kind of capture them, whether it's at youth and you're all the way with them in the Parks and Rec space through seniors, or they just come to you because today I want to try something new. There's sort of something for everyone, and every moment has that opportunity for impact. And I think that's a very cool way to think about Parks and Rec as we
Yeah.
celebrate, Parks Make Life Better Month.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's, coming here to San Bernardino, I've seen it more than any other location I've ever worked, where such an underserved city. I have so many staff that grew up in the Parks and Rec system here. So this is the first place where I've never even broached the topic of teaching impact, because they know it, they live it, they breathe it, right? And instead it's teaching standards of excellence. And you said it perfectly, is, we improve the lives of people through impact. It's not the program, it's the impact that the program had on their life, and here I get a lot of the testimonials from parents that will say, oh my gosh, if you would have been in my home 6 months ago compared to what our home is like today, just because their kid fell in love with something that was happening at the parks, because we were able to provide them with no barriers of cost or whatever it might be, that eliminates stress at home, that has different impacts that we will never see, right? And so those testimonials, Marie Knight talks about that quite a bit, is it's the storytelling, right? It's like, what are you doing to tell the story? Stop talking about the program, talk about the impact of the program.
Yeah.
No.
Excellent. Well, and as you've been a director in this role for a number of years now, as we're talking about impact, what are a few small but maybe meaningful accomplishments that for you have really made a difference in your community? And what are the things that you really latch on to say, I'm really going to pursue this because I think it's really meaningful for those that I serve?
Yeah. I'd say probably the one that I just cherish so very much is my relationships with some of the community leaders in San Bernardino. When I got here, it was scary to see the mistrust that the public had in the city. And so there was no program, there was no event that was going to fix that. We had to really get out into the community. And I was really fortunate to meet this very inspirational woman. She goes by the name of Malibu, but she connects people that are in rival gangs together. She's a connecting piece in our community. And her and I have always had a passion from what we dealt with in, our personal lives, of just mental health for women, and making sure that, women who have gone through trauma are able to know that they have a safe place. And so she created a program called A Million Morning Women. And I had the honor, is what I like to say, to be able to help facilitate that program at one of our centers. And it's seeing these women thrive now because they've had just a space given to them. I didn't do anything. I opened the doors, but knowing that impact, because these women are moms and aunts and grandmas to the future of our city. And our reality is that our kids here at a very young age are already destined to be in gangs or selling drugs or doing things that are not going to lead to a fulfilled life. And these women are making that difference. And that's our little impact. And I think that's one of those proud small accomplishments, because the reality is that you don't want to talk necessarily about race, but there that was a hard conversation where you have a Black woman and then a white woman from Orange County, blonde hair, blue eyes, that walks into a room full of Black women, and they've all had trauma and I had trauma, and that was our connecting piece. And all of a sudden, everything that was color, everything that was everything else fades away, and our connecting piece is just our experience, right? And to be able to support that and to be able to regain that trust has been so fulfilling. And so that's one of my small accomplishments. I think large accomplishments, we've been able to get a nationally acclaimed award from the National League of Cities for our festival cultural event, which is huge, like something like that would have, it's never been done here. Yeah. And so, seeing the staff go, what? We're doing what? I was like, let me introduce you to this event. So,
great. Trust me.
Yeah. I promise it will work. And then, to do it at Second Lake where there was dead bodies in the lake and we had to get everything cleaned up, that type of impact, we did it in 4 months, which was insane. If you think about it, we completely flipped a site, flipped an event in 4 months. And I'll never forget, there was this older couple at the event and I saw them keep walking around the lake. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? Are they lost? What's happening? And my staff are like, stop. They're just walking around the lake. I'm like, no, something's wrong with them. I can tell, like, they keep stopping and having a conversation. Like, is there a body in the lake? Like, that's the fear I always had, is like, is something going to pop up out of the water, Yeah. And I just walked over to them and I was, hey, is everything okay? And like, the woman is just crying. And I'm like, oh my God, do you need help? Is this an emergency? Do you need 911? And she said, no. She said, this is where my husband proposed to me 40 years ago, and we have not been back since because it got so bad. And thank you so much for reopening our park. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Just
soul crushing in the most lovely way.
I was like, where's the camera? I needed the camera.
Oh, that's so lovely though. Oh.
Yeah. So, it's, you can talk small, you can talk big. I really just kind of focus on those moments that they just make my heart feel good. And, if that's the only thing that I got out of that event, then I just won the gold medal, like that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know you to be a big supporter of your staff. And so let's do a little bit of shout out to your team. What are some of the things that they've accomplished that you're really proud of them for?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll just start. Number one is just being resilient. Like, the things that we've dealt with, right? We had bankruptcy. We had the pandemic. We've had 5 city managers in 3 years. It's like, change and resiliency is, I've never met a team that's just like, they just go. They like to say it doesn't matter. What do they say? It doesn't matter who's up there. It's what we do down here, And so, I applaud them for their resiliency. I think, just being able to reopen our doors after the pandemic, and because normally in cities like ours, they stay closed, right? And they become an abandoned space. And unfortunately, we have, a large population of unhoused individuals who have taken over our parks and taken over our centers as well. And so that's, for them, it was detrimental to find the balance of how do we continue to provide some awesome programming, and really also understand that we have some societal issues that we've got to be supportive of, and be able to get resources and be able to do the work, right? And so them balancing that act and staying chill has been very rewarding for all of us to see. I think then just also just taking initiative. This is a big city. And we don't have a lot of staff. And so I got part-time staff writing grants and winning grants, which is like, what? I love it. Keep going. So, and, they always laugh at me because they're always afraid every time like something goes wrong. Like when a city manager is like on their way out, they always come in, please don't leave. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere, So I think that now we have that trust. And so I'm just really proud of them for the ability to love this city. Mm-hmm. Like it's their own. And I think they're also just their presence and their peace of mind, knowing that we can trust each other and we can work together. So.
Hey friends, ELGL is excited to celebrate the 9th annual City Hall Selfie Day on Thursday, August 15th. This is your opportunity to showcase pride in local government by snapping a selfie in front of your favorite local government building. Just use the hashtag City Hall Selfie and tag ELGL when posting your pics on social media. Get your friends, get your coworkers, and get creative to compete for prizes in categories such as Best Dressed, Best Community Engagement, and People's Choice. Visit elgl.org for more information. We can't wait to see your beautiful faces and community pride on August 15th.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, and thinking about your staff in this space, and a lot of them having the lived experience from the community and being there, that's that there's a lot of ownership and a lot of meaning to that, on top of just an industry of service, right? And so
Sure.
I think when you have, and we've been talking about it in our city, when you have some of these positions where you're able to bring in folks from the community and really lean into their lived experience, it makes it helpful for them to connect to the mission and the work, and it helps the community to connect with the programs and services that a local government or a parks and recreation agency provides,
Yeah.
because they see themselves in the people who work there, and they see their communities and in the programs and services offered.
Oh gosh, I mean 100%. And it's like we've talked about. It's just those testimonials, right? And we have so many community members who will come out and just shout their support for the programs, the services, the events. And my teams, they don't go to necessarily all the council meetings, but I'm constantly sending them the links like, hey, go to minute 1825. And then, they're getting their shout outs, and they've never had that. They've never had that experience. So it's kind of like when that testimonial flips and all of a sudden it's the experience of the staff member, and they're taken aback by it. And it's almost like that's the norm that I want to not have. I don't want them to be taken aback. I want them to push to always have that and know that they've got the community's trust now. Mm-hmm. So we're in that great time where it's like we're gelling, staff is finally back and the community feels it. And oh my gosh, I mean, if there's a council that meeting where anything is mentioned about cutting a program, they come out in droves and no, it's staying.
That's always helpful during
yes.
Well, and a lot of the you and I have worked together in the Parks and Recs community services space, and I've always observed how Parks and Rec, because of the kind of work that we have done and that we do, and the kinds of programs we have, it is often the first job for many of our young folks, right? The youth in our communities. And this can really provide a window into how to encourage a career in local government. So it might be that someone is a Parks and Rec kid and loves that work and ends up to be, someone like you, or it can be that this is a stop along the way in local governance, which I think is kind of interesting. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what are you seeing with the next generation of Parks and Rec professionals, and what should local governments be ready to embrace for this workforce?
Gosh, that is a loaded question, girlfriend. All right. I think the first trend that I'm starting to see more and more of is the communication gap that we have to really pay attention to. Communication that was done on email or in person or on phone is now text, messenger, DM. It's no longer are the days of tone is not really well represented in a text. No, you got to get over it. You got to figure out your tone in a text message, because I'm communicating so much with young individuals who have, I don't want to say they don't have the time. They just don't have the patience to get into a lengthy conversation. Right. So that's part one. Part two is kind of listening. I think for a long time, we've really harped on people of communicate your needs. Well, folks, they're communicating their needs now. So you better pay attention and listen up, because it's happening. Right. And so, I'm getting a lot more, requests for just different things. And so just really understanding when a staff member that is younger is communicating their specific needs and their expectations, we have to have a listening ear, and balance that with a mentoring heart, right? And so cool, I respect that you want to work from home 3 days a week. However, we are in the service of serving people, so you're going to need to be here, right? But at the same time, are there some duties that can be done at home that we can kind of balance that out with, right? So I love that. I think the other trend that I'm really starting to see is the use of technology. I'm blown away by what some of my staff are capable of doing. Like I'm just like, how did you do that? What did you just do? You know, like they just blow me away. And I thought I was a really cool techie. I'm not. I guess I'm old now. So I just, you know, agencies and local governments need to be, I think, ready for engagement in the virtual world. I think AI plays a huge role.
Yeah.
And this generation coming in is going to know AI better than anyone else. And it's really gonna kind of flip the whole concept of how much staff time is taken to do certain things. And I also think it's going to give an opportunity to younger staff to be involved in higher level thinking than has ever been done in the past. And so, like I said, you know, part-time staff writing grants was not something that was done 10 years ago. Now I have a part-time staff that just got a $750,000 grant. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for some cities, you know? And so just kind of continuing to recognize them, continuing to encourage them, but balancing and making sure that we're doing things ethically and with integrity is really important. And I think the final thing, and this is really weird, it's come up a few times now, but especially with the under 16, so your rec aides, there seems to be a lot more parent involvement. And so parents showing up to interviews, parents showing up to the workplace, parents calling the employer. I'm getting a lot more of that. And I've just started to kind of tap into it here in the last 3 months. Actually, we've had quite a few instances where looking at policy and finding out when we have young people in the workplace, what is the line where the parent needs to stay at home and where the employer needs to have a supervisory stance, but just also understand they're 15.
Mm-hmm.
And they might need a little bit more guidance and they might need a little bit more white glove treatment. So that way the parent feels secure and the kid feels secure, and then the agency can benefit from the work.
Well, that's super interesting. I would that was not on my bingo card for our conversation today. But wow, yeah. Well, and I think, you know, I had, you know, parents who were generally involved in my life, you know, did things like volunteer in classrooms and, you know, generally had some aspect of oversight. That's not everyone's, you know, upbringing and experience, but it certainly was mine. But I don't know that my parents would have ever thought to come to a job interview. But at the same time, it's also the place where your kid is going to be spending a lot of time. And, you know, there's been a lot of places where that hasn't been a safe space, and wanting to the best for your child, that, you know, I get that.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah. And it's a balance. It's like I said, you know, it truly is one of those things where you can either ignore it. And I'm one of those that I'd rather get in front of it because I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I always tell the parents, I was like, you can work here too. We just got to put you at a different center. If you got this kind of time, we're hiring.
Yeah, trying to knock out that vacancy rate, right?
Why not? Why not?
Well, and then as you're learning in this space, we're talking a little bit about, you know, the next generation, but what about some upcoming trends in general in the parks and recreation profession? In particular, what are some of those that local government leaders should be aware of and ready to support?
Oh, I think AI is top of my list. Yeah, 100%. Like AI is going to be the game changer, in my opinion, when it comes to just program curriculum. Things that just were not even a thought, because Google, you had to search through a million things. Now you just type it into your prompter and say, hey, I want to create a killer program, 10-week program for summer. And what used to take 2 weeks is in your inbox in less than 40 seconds. It's like, what? This is amazing. So I think it's going to do two things. I think it's going to save us some time. I think it's going to be, I'm a huge supporter of AI. But I feel like it's going to be a time saver, but at the same time, it's going to like finally provide staff with like just this template. Now you can go research the rest of that, instead of having to find the outline, you're given an outline. And so that's the hardest part, is like, especially and people don't realize that the type of responsibility that we're giving our camp leaders, our rec leaders, and like our camp directors in the summer, especially, it's like, people are paying a lot of money to send their kids to these camps.
Mm-hmm.
And there is like minute to minute programming that is done. And all of that takes place 3 months prior to these camps even becoming live. And it used to do that. And now we can do it like in 2 weeks. It can be like fully loaded with like all the Amazon shopping done, And so that to me is exciting, because then it allows my staff to do even higher level thinking. So
Yes.
now once they're done with their programming, they're able to take a facility aspect to it and go, is my facility ready? Do we need to clean more windows? Do we need to have these restrooms repaired? And then that's where I get excited, because then they're learning a whole new scheme of things that they would have never had the opportunity to. And they would have stayed in this programming tunnel. And now they're doing it as a facilitator, as a programmer, and as an advocate for parks and recreation. So I think that that's a huge trend that's coming up.
Well, and I think we talk about AI in this space, and I've heard people say this, and I'm on board with this, is the whole concept of AI. It can do a whole host of things, but in our profession, if we can get it to replace the mundane, and then to use your language about this higher level thinking and learning and doing, that ends up being the most like time efficient way to use it, until we learn how it does other things that can help us in our lives. Right. But that in and of itself, I just absolutely see it saving so much time.
I have these conversations with people across the nation when I'm doing my trainings, and it's always like, what is your biggest energy and time sucker? And they always tell me it's coming up with the outline, coming up with the concept, coming up with your end game. Type it in. What's the worst that can happen? You get an idea. You might not use the whole thing, but you're going to get something, And so I think at that level, I think it's really exciting. Now at the higher level, do your research, be smarter, obviously as a director. I love it when I can write, I just did it for my Memorial Day script. This was awesome, right? I'm like, I had to do the script. I was like, oh God, another Memorial Day script. Here we go. And I was just like, hold on one second. Hey, I prepare an outline for a memorial script with this and this and this. Boom, done. Had that. I then gave that to my coordinators and said, I need each of you to break this down into 3 sections. Give me a good poem. Give me something good. It was phenomenal. I loved it. Right. And so that's something that would have taken a long time. The second trend that I'm seeing definitely becoming, especially in the program world, esports.
Yes.
Esports is massive. It's crazy, because I remember this conversation. I remember going to conference like 5 years ago, and I think it was NRPA, and Nile Bot was like talking about, esports, and there was a magazine that had it filling Madison Square Garden or something like that to watch. Right. And I was just like, dude, this is crazy. Like, who does this? And sure enough, at that time I had a 17-year-old, and I would always make fun of him, because I was like, you're watching YouTube to watch a guy play Madden, but you're not playing. You're just watching him play. I could not grasp. I was like, what is this phenomenon? I don't understand it. And I remember then when I heard Nile, I was like, oh, this is what he's doing. So then, of course, I'm a true believer. I use my kids' brains. So I was like, Justin, you need to tell me what it is that makes this tick for you. And he's like, well, I'm just learning kind of with the moves. I'm learning what they do. And these are the best of the best. And I was like, okay, got it. So I started digging into esports. And Mission Viejo wasn't ready for it. So I then got here, and we kind of started tapping into it, and I'm really excited. Next year, we're going to launch our very first gaming room. And it's going to be phenomenal, because it's not just about the sports. There's an equity piece to it. Mm-hmm. There's science-driven articles that will tell you that, a kid that is on the spectrum can compete at the same level, if not higher, than an able-bodied individual with no disabilities at all. So that's right there is a huge piece for us, and then the other parts is it's not just about the game. There's career paths here. We're doing career paths in coding, career paths in drone flying, career paths in like aviation.
Yeah.
There's just so many cool things that are happening. And when you look at cities like mine here that is severely underserved, where it's kind of a thing that's said here is the only way that you're going to get out of the hood is if you play pro sports. That's not true anymore. Like, we have opportunities, and that's actually being done through Parks and Recreation. And we have like great sponsors that are going to come through and help us build this. And so I'm really excited because I think it's going to be the template and the model for the next 10 years. And we're going to really try and pop these into every single one of our centers. So that way every ward has the ability to have something going on. So I think esports is the second one. And I think the final one is we've got to be able to look at lifeguarding as a true career path. I think the pandemic killed lifeguards. Obviously, my background is heavily into aquatics, and I've never seen such efforts put into recruitment for lifeguards. The concept of full-time lifeguards now is real. It is coming. And I think we need to look at countries like Australia, and they're teaching lifeguarding as a profession from the time these kids are in, 4th, 5th grade, just like firemen, just like police officers. This is a career path that needs to be built into our system because we've got too many children that are drowning. And it's completely preventable. And I think that if we start to teach water safety and encourage folks in a career path of keeping their community safe, it just has such a beautiful, like, revolving structure around it that really kind of, there's nothing better, right? Like you had your hand in making sure that your city doesn't drown, that, kids are being water safe, that families are water safe, and that we're able to enjoy recreation and aquatics very positively. I think that's just a beautiful thing. And so I think that's the third trend, is really starting to have these conversations of when does lifeguarding become a curriculum in, junior colleges and in high schools that can get you a degree in life-saving techniques.
Yeah. Well, and I know there's a number of places, including Long Beach, that has our junior guards program, right? And so it's already creating that pipeline. And so there's a lot of places that do it. Where do they go, right? And it's not just that you're going to then go be a firefighter, but you could be, in this context, a lifeguard as a career. That's kind of an interesting trend.
Yeah. And you just actually stated, it's funny because I didn't think you were going to say it, but so you have junior lifeguards in the beach system. How do we get the junior lifeguard program in the pool system?
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
And so I sit on the board of directors for the California Water Safety Coalition. We just launched last year our California Water Safety Plan, which is an enhancement to the National Water Safety Plan. And it talks about just that, is stop looking at water safety as beach. We have to think of it as any recreational water space. That's lakes, that's rivers, that's pools, that's puddles, that's, waterways, that's rivers. I mean, it's everywhere, right? I mean, we had a drowning here in our wash just down the street, and so we have to really look at that. We have to look at how are people recreating in water, and why is it? And I just this morning sent a text message to the directors in this group. Pennsylvania, a couple died in a riptide while their 6 children on the beach watched as their parents got swept away. And it's just like, people will pay attention to a shark warning and will not go in the water.
Right.
But it doesn't matter what type of education we give you about a riptide warning. You don't know what it means, and you're still going to get in the water, right? And so it's flipping that narrative, right? And I think that that's where that trend comes from. I think it's really starting to talk about water safety education and taking it to that next level.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's even, on a number of these things, you mentioned kind of this concept of esports. There was an email just this morning from ICMA with a quote from the person from the Network of Academic and Scholastic Esport Federations, saying that it's a larger industry worldwide now than music and movies combined. And I like had to read that 3 times because, growing up it was video games will rot your brain, go outside and play, right? And now you can get scholarships to college and you can do all of these great things, and they're reinforcing our STEAM and STEM programs.
100.
And you can create a whole career out of this, like lifeguarding, like esports. And there's a lot of equity aspects to a number of these things. And I think that, in some of these trends is really powerful, because you can think about, it's not just those that have access to opportunity anymore. It's breaking down those barriers and providing access. So I love that those are the things that you pointed out for your trends.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this earlier as you're talking about all of the things that you're involved in, Lydie. So fun fact about Lydie, she really knows how to maximize her spare time. She has a family with children and a number of activities. She was the owner and head choreographer for a nationally ranked competitive cheer company.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the owner of 2 vacation rentals. So it sounds exhausting just saying all of that, first of all. So what are some of your personal habits that help you balance the busy with the ability to focus on that community impact?
Gosh, I think I should probably start writing a book about it at some point. I think it's really good to compartmentalize. And so I am really good about shutting off one, starting another. I try to really work hard on not meshing my work with my personal life. So I am a true believer. I clock out of here at 6:30 and I clock out. And if people need to get a hold of me, they can call me. I very rarely will answer a text after I leave here. I am really, really adamant about it, because I'm not getting paid for that time. But my family will suffer if I don't give them that time. And so I really try and be adamant about when I clock out and when I clock back in. Now, there's always emergencies. As department heads, we're always going to have that. So my husband might disagree with what I just said, especially during the summer season, because we're a little bit later. But so that's number 1. Number 2 is I calendar the heck out of my life. My kids laugh at me because I have magnetic calendars on the refrigerator that are color coded. They make fun of me, but they are also, they know, just this morning, Chloe, my middle, was like, hey, what do we got going on the 27th? And she goes, never mind, walks over to the calendar, and she knows, okay, I can be here. I can do that. So that's number 2, is the calendaring system. But then I also am really big about just ensuring that my kids understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And so I really was lucky. My mom was just such a hardworking woman. I never saw her. I never saw my mom. She was always so busy with the hair industry. And it wasn't that she didn't want to see me. It's just she was providing for us. Right. And so it took me a long time as a young adult to understand that and really dig down and understand that it wasn't because she didn't love me. It wasn't, it's because she was doing her best to provide for me. And so I promised myself when I had my first baby that I would make sure that my kids would always know why mom works late, or why I have these things going on. And I try and involve my kids in that. And so that's really the only time that I will bring the 2 together. Is my kids love my special events. They're learning special events. My kids are at the pools and they know that water safety is very important to me, probably more than they should. They're the ones that are at camp with their own age kids, and they're like, you don't have a life jacket. What are you doing? My mom says this is not going to happen. I actually have a funny note up there. It's it's Gabby's note to me, and she says, I love you because you won't let me drown. But so I think
she knows the why. That's important.
She knows my why, right? And so my kids know my why. My kids know that I value my job and that it's not a job. They know that I am honed into making sure that people's lives are improved by the work that we do. And that takes effort, and that takes dedication, that takes time. The other stuff is passion, right? And so like my cheerleading business, I was a dancer, I was a professional dancer. And so for me, it was natural to do choreography. It's something that was my therapy. It's a way for me to work out and do all of that. And then be able to coach my kids, like, and be able to get them ready for their elite level sports. Both my girls are in all-star cheer now. So it's kind of one of those things where it was a win-win for me. I got to kind of balance both worlds doing that. And then the Airbnb stuff, man, that kind of came out of nowhere. That was a pandemic, like, well, maybe we should, and we bought one, and I think I have like a passion now for property management and interior design, which is something like I never thought I would have. And so my husband's like, stop, you need to stop. And so I told him I wanted 2 in 2 years, and now we have 2. And I think that's where I'm going to stop for now. But yeah, I think the more you can have like an understanding of loving something, and I involve my kids in any passion projects, right? And so my kids painted the houses, my kids built things for the houses. These are houses that will be, their generational wealth. They'll have them when they have kids. And, what a cool thing to build these memories and have these kind of like awesome moments that are like taking the kids out of, being in front of a phone, and instead like, you guys are property owners. So what do you guys want to do? Right. And so, I try and make sure that if it's not work, the kids know the why, the kids are involved somewhat, and that my husband and I can at least retire knowing that we did something right.
Yeah. Well, and being a property manager and being involved as a kid is very different than the finances that they taught us in home ec all those years ago, right?
Right.
real life skills. So good job.
My kids can flip a bed real good.
Good job, Mom. Well, and since we hit on cheerleading, from one former competitive cheerleader to another, what parallels do you see between cheerleading and local government in this park, like in the Parks and Rec space?
Yeah, I think I see 2. One is advocacy, right? So when you're cheering, you're cheering on for your team. You're cheering what you're rooting for, right? And so I think cheerleading for me has always been one of those things where it's, people forget that there's the word leader in cheerleading, or cheerleader. And so I've always kind of honed in on my leadership aspects of, I'm always part of a team. I'm always going to be, whether it's executive or not, whether it's a board of directors. I really take those concepts of doing 110% in whatever I do. I also think that cheerleading is a very vulnerable sport because you get 2.5 minutes. And it's not like any other sport where, you have a whole season and you have multiple games and there's bench players that can sub in. That's not cheerleading. Cheerleading, especially all-star cheerleading, is you work your butt off for 6 months and then you start your competition season. And every time you go to compete, it's you and 10 other teams and you got 2.5 minutes. And if you messed up, well, that's it. On to the next. And
no do-over. Yeah.
There's no tiebreaker. There's none of that, right? And so I think learning from some cheerleading fails, which would have been considered failures, I consider them awesome. But not winning first is something that's humbling, especially when you've got a strong team. And I think sometimes when we think about local government, budget cuts, how are you going to act? How are you going to react? How are you going to respond? Right. And so I try and take the lessons learned from the many years of heartbreaks in cheerleading, but also like successes in cheerleading of this is just one day.
Yeah.
We can always come back tomorrow and we can fix it. We can change the stunt, we can change the count. So as long as I continue to have a forward thinking heart and just that mindset of, it's not about winning. It's just about going out and doing my absolute best and controlling what I can control. I can take that in. But then the other part is I can perform.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the time it's a performance, like you can either read a staff report or you can perform a staff report. And I say this to my staff quite a bit. No one wants to read the paper that is in front of them. They don't want that read. What are you going to take out of that and tell that story with passion So your council hears it and has no other choice but to accept it and support you on it, right? And so I think that they've really learned a lot about how they tell the story, and I try and teach them the performance acts. And it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to just be a positive person. It doesn't hurt to we look at, people laugh at me all the time, but I have this wall behind me, right? And people are like, oh my God, do you ever think that people think you're conceited? I was like, well, let them. That's fine. This is called the I worked my butt off wall.
Right.
And I am damn proud of every single thing that's on here. And so if people want to take offense to what I've done, that's okay, And so I think I have to be my own cheerleader at times, and you have to keep inspiring others. And I tell people all the time, because they'll come in here and be like, oh my God, you were president here. And I was like, yeah. And then it's like that conversation starter. Okay, you want to get involved in women in leisure services? Here's what we're going to do. Let me tell you a story. Right. Yeah. And so I think it's really important that we're cheerleaders for ourselves. And I think I learned that through coaching of sometimes, you got to coach a team, but you got to coach yourself too. And you got to be able to just kind of take a minute and just kind of reflect and realize that we're all really lucky to work in this field. It's the coolest job in the world. I would never give it up. And, poor Mark, my husband, he's ready to retire. And I'm like, nah, I'm not done. not yet.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first, folks. There is parallels between cheerleading and local government. So
that's right.
Well, as we wrap up today, Lydie, tell us what's next for you. Clearly, it's not retirement, but what are you working on that our listeners should look out for?
Two big things is our master plan. The first one since 2008 is going to be finished here in January-ish 2025. So this Parks and Recreation master plan is so intense and awesome and community driven. We were really lucky to have it, having worked with Next Practice Partners. Neil Bott and his team have just been phenomenal. So I'm super excited to bring something like this to the Inland Empire and really kind of set a new standard for what we're going to do here in our park system. So that's very, very exciting. And then the second thing is, just being able to get through these ARPA funds, right? We've got a ton of money that is wrapped up in some CIP projects. And these are going to be parks and community centers and fields that have been just left to the wayside for a very, very, very long time. And so I'm excited to see projects in completion in 25, 26. And I think that, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you're going to get to see all this awesome stuff happening here in San Bernardino. And hopefully that'll help us recruit some really awesome folks to keep coming here and working here.
Excellent. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining. But if you could be the GovLove DJ, Lydie, what song would you pick as the exit music for this episode?
All right. So I have to go with, it's Taylor Swift from the Tortured Poets Department. And I believe it's called You Don't Be Afraid of Little Old Me, or Are You Afraid of Little Old Me? And I think it's just this cool song that, some people underestimate the power of who you are and what you can do, and to believe in yourself and let the noise go away. So that's what I'm going to leave y'all with. Don't be afraid to be great.
Excellent. That ends our GovLove episode for today. Thank you to Lydie for coming on and talking with me about all things Parks and Rec. Subscribe to GovLove on your favorite podcast app. New episodes drop every Friday. If you are already subscribed to GovLove, go tell a friend or colleague about this podcast or share on social media. Help us spread the word that GovLove is the go-to place for local government stories. GovLove is brought to you by ELGL, Engaging Local Government Leaders. The best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. You can reach us online at elgl.org/govlove or at GovLove Podcast on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Thanks for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
The scandal was contained. The bullet had just grazed. At all costs, keep your good name. You don't get to tell me you feel bad. Let's hear one more joke. Then we could all just laugh until I cry. So I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street. Crash the party like a record scratch as I scream. Who's afraid of little old